Maverick and the Machine is sponsored by Jones Plantation Film. If you haven't seen the indie, soon-to-be cult classic Jones Plantation Film yet, go watch that film. It's available now at jonesplantationfilm.com. That's jonesplantationfilm.com, and on a bunch of the other big platforms.
Bo Jones!
Now, let's launch this episode of Maverick in the Machine.
Insanity is what I call society. Don't tell me what to do, don't tell me how to be. I don't trust the government, I know they lie to me. They could like my body, yo, for my soul and mind to free.
All right, we are excited and thankful to have the Maverick, Mike Winter, in the building. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, Drew? Good to be back, man. Well, this is my first time on your show, but good to be back with you, bro. We had a nice week in Mexico not long ago.
We did, and that's that was a lot of fun. Alfacast podcast, alfavedic.com. We'll get into all that later. I want to go over alfavedic.com because that's a really interesting website. So I guess tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? You born and raised? You move around? What was it like?
Yeah. Well, it's good to be with you here. Blessed to be with a fellow freedom lover, fan of cinema, which I'm sure we'll discuss a lot.
Oh,
today.
yeah. Me and Mike are both ex-Hollywood guys, so we're gonna have some really good stories there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, funny enough, I grew up sort of in the belly of the beast, but a little south of that in Orange County in SoCal. So I was
basically LA.
Yeah, basically LA, the suburbs of LA. It's where the diaspora from the original Angelinos moved to in the 50s and 60s. And yeah, it was a blessed childhood. Looking back, I'm quite blessed. I got to grow up in a pretty epic time of Orange County in the 90s when it was pre-internet, pretty much, pre-cell phone. Kids were running wild. We were punk rock, surfer, skaters, and going to Disneyland every night. It's actually my first job. My first legitimate job was working at Disneyland and hanging out with people like in bands like No Doubt and Real Big Fish and Aquabats. It was like a huge scene when I was in high school there. So yeah, that's where I grew up, Orange County, a little on the east side, so not directly on the ocean, which forced me to really take on skateboarding as a kid. And yeah, man, my parents are still together. They live up next to us now, up in the mountains here, which we can get into later, and how I moved my family the hell out of LA back in 2016. But yeah, I'm very fortunate to have parents that guided me in the right way. I mean, nothing was perfect. Nothing is, right? We all have our battles and our challenges in our own families. But yeah, they're still together, and my kids get to see their grandkids all the time, which is awesome. I have one sister. She's now in Michigan, super supportive. We were very close growing up. She actually followed me and went to the same college. And yeah, man, life was good, but life was hella boring too. I will say, like, there was like a weird contrast where when you're growing up in a place like Orange County in the 90s, which actually hit the pop cultural, there was like a lot of cultural significance around Orange County in the 90s. There was a movie called Orange County made. There was the show called The OC, if you remember. Later on, it was Housewives of Orange County, all that stuff. And growing up at that time, it was cool because we were sort of hip and it had a focus around us, especially around the third wave ska scene that kind of exploded out of there. But it was also sort of an eruption of just pure materialism and consumerism, and which really highlighted the 90s. It was sort of like a microcosm of the macro of that time. Growing up there, I became really sort of, cynical and nihilistic almost about life because of the nature of just, being surrounded by soccer moms, SUVs, and strip malls. So that's why I think I really embraced punk rock, and my friends and I became sort of anarchists. Like, we were very sober. We didn't really party much, but we went and we did what was called wreaking havoc, which was going and causing disturbances in the very boring suburban neighborhoods we lived in, and we would film it. So that's sort of where my film background started. Is I was the guy with the camera. and we were very much inspired by punk rock skate videos and snowboard videos that preceded later on, the very popular movies of the what were those guys? Johnny Knoxville and what was the other cat's name? Bam Margera or whatever. They were doing this, Jackass movies. But before that, there was like the whiskey snowboard videos and these others. There was a skate crew that preceded Jackass, and they would just film themselves doing crazy stunts and stuff. And we were doing the same thing. So that's where I started getting behind the camera and filming us dressed up as nuns, going into grocery stores and skateboarding through malls and doing stuff like that. So that was my childhood.
Yeah, you guys, it's almost like that area of the world it's almost, I don't know what's going on now, but it's almost like perfect. It's like picturesque. You got the beach. I mean, it's beautiful. I could see how you could get, as a kid, you get a cynical kid just to kind of flip the opposite of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why so many people flock to Southern California. It is really perfect weather. I mean, it's a Mediterranean climate year round. You're in the 70s Fahrenheit. You don't have really 4 seasons. However, you can get, you can get some winter rains and stuff, but yeah, it's perfect. I remember going to the ocean on Christmases, and swimming. And it was very idyllic growing up, going to the beach and hanging out at Newport Beach and Huntington, and beautiful blonde babes everywhere. And yeah, I mean, it definitely obviously has that aesthetic and that appeal. But on this, as you were saying, on the flip side, as a kid who I didn't quite fit in, I wasn't super cool. I was pretty nerdy. I was super into in junior high and like D&D and video games and going, riding my bike to the arcade. I did play sports. However, I was still pretty nerdy. And then it wasn't until high school that I discovered punk rock and ska and kind of found my scene. But I was always sort of a skinny kid. I wasn't a very confident surfer. That's why I kind of was attracted more to skateboarding. And so I didn't get those beautiful blonde babes as a kid. So I think that also led to my my feeling as an outcast in that picturesque, the OC movie sort of world that was portrayed to, mainstream media and mainstream culture.
And then you go off to you graduate. Where were you in Orange County? What part?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Yorba Linda, which was more and very picturesque too. It was known to have like the highest median income in the United States at the time. Like,
so you're loaded. Your family's loaded.
No, my family came from. So yeah, this is great. My family came from very working class. My dad's from Montana. He literally was one of 6. Or one of 5, excuse me, who was at one point growing up in a 2-bedroom cabin in the forest where he would have to wake up and go fish for his breakfast. And my grandfather was in the timber industry and then had a accident where a tree fell on him and I believe broke his back. So he had to stop working. So they had to move into town in Missoula, Montana in the 60s. My dad ended up enlisted into the military for Vietnam. And then he got the hell out of Montana, went to San Diego. And that's where he met my mom. My mom is one of 8 from upstate New York, very middle-class family. And she was an officer in the Navy as an RN, and my father was a corpsman. And they met there on a blind date and fell in love. And so my dad became a he went and got his master's in psychology, but actually became a commercial real estate agent and broker, eventually a commodity broker, when my mom was just an RN. And she worked her way up to run hospitals. So they're just kind of like pull yourself up from your bootstraps types of parents who just worked their asses off and actually prioritized our education over anything. So at one point, my mom was driving like a Saturn. My dad had very modest vehicles, but they prioritized where we lived and what schools we went to. So I was fortunate enough to go to private school. I went to Catholic school my whole life. I ended up going to an all-boys Catholic high school called Servite. which was a bit challenging at first, but not having girls there. But my nerdy self actually didn't totally mind because I was quite awkward around girls as a freshman. And I still have a really tight crew of friends from that, a tight-knit group of guy friends that we became very close going through that experience of going to an all-boys Catholic high school that was very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all really successful. Some actually still work in Hollywood. Actually, one is a Emmy award-winning editor, and another is pretty high up in NBC. And then the others own restaurants and businesses and are all very successful in terms of like conventional success. And then, I came out of that and I wanted to just revolt against all things private Catholic. And I had kind of really distanced myself from the church. So I ended up going to University of California, Santa Barbara, specifically for the skating, because they had epic skating there on the campus. They were known at that time for Church of Skating and like Chad Muska and the Shorties crew. And my friend that went with me from Servite, my buddy Art the Fart Jacobs, we called him. He was like this little Asian, half Hawaiian, half Asian kid, Japanese actually, who was a ripping skater. And so we came out of private school and chose UC. I got into like Penn and Notre Dame and like Ivy League schools.
Really?
But I told my parents, I was like, I got to go somewhere that I need to find myself and release from private school, life. So it was a great experience. It was a pretty crazy party school. I actually went in as a pre-law history double major and then quickly found that I hated law. I hated the legal system. I saw right through how corrupt and hypocritical it is. However, I did love history. And so my sophomore year, I was actually room with a bunch of film guys that were going to film school that were a year older than me. And one was actually, I believe, a senior, and he was a DP already. And he ended up going to AFI. He was like top of the class. And
American Film Institute, just for people.
American Film Institute. And he was a total nerdy Jew guy that just somehow answered an ad that we had an open room, because I was just living in a house full of DJs, because at this point I'd become a DJ, which we can get into.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, I called I was like hanging out with them and I was at this time I was actually working at Emerald Video, which was the local video rental place in Isla Vista, where all the kids live for UCSB. And so I was always just really into film. And so I called my folks. I said, I'm switching my major. I'm leaving the law world. I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm switching to film studies. And they were very supportive. They said, okay, if this is your passion and this is what you want to do. It made sense to them because I was always like filming stuff at home and making home movies. So yeah, that's how I ended up transferring towards my passion for film there at UCSB. Affectionately, we would call it "You Can Study Buzzed."
So two things I was going to say. Sounds like you hit the jackpot with parents. You hit the jackpot, and two, I actually had the same experience. I actually went to New York City. I went to what's the first day of law school? First day of school. They call that
like orientation.
Orientation. I went to orientation, got my ID, everything, and I was like, I was all set up. I had an apartment in New York. I'm like, I can't do it, and I left. But
so you left New York altogether, or you
left New York altogether? I mean, I came back years later and lived there for a year, but yeah,
to me, Drew, just shout New York to me. Your whole vibe and everything. It seems like you would do quite well in the city there.
Well, I'm from Pittsburgh, born and raised, so
yeah,
the East Coast is what you're talking about. Even though they call Pittsburgh Midwest, it's an Eastern town.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, that's why when you're talking about Orange County and like the punk rock, and we're just like, dude, it's 2 foot of snow and dreary, and somebody just threw a rock at my head. I don't want to hear it from you.
Man, that creates a special soul, that's a lot of the most successful filmmakers came from, a place like that where they were shut in all winter and had to use their creative, their creative metal to find a way out of the misery that was that weather, those winters.
Well, I mean, I'm so thankful I grew up in Pittsburgh. It's like a badge of honor. And it's like one of the greatest towns in America. If you ever go there, you'll love it. It's like, it's still old school neighborhoods. Yeah. People pass the houses down. And it's just, I'm very, I mean, it's got a lot of issues and problems, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of fist fights, that kind of thing. But it's just a real place. And the architecture is just outrageous. It's beautiful. And people don't realize that. But I'm just so thankful to be from there. It's such a, like, yeah, it gives you something, a little extra. Every time I meet somebody from Pittsburgh, or if I'm working or I'm hiring somebody they're from Pittsburgh, they're generally going to have a really good work ethic, and they're generally going to be straightforward people, you know?
Yeah, you got to be a little more cautious when you're navigating SoCalers, because
oh man,
that is a thing, right? Like, I'm fortunate to have the parents that instilled a work ethic in me, and going to like an all boys Catholic school where it was all about discipline, determination. There was the 4 Ds: determination, discipline, desire, and dedication. And
that's amazing. I don't underestimate Catholic school. And I went to Catholic school for a little while when I was a kid. I know I'm Catholic. I mean, I was raised Catholic. I know all about it.
Yeah, my kids are going now. They were homeschooled and they want to go back to school. So they're going to a 150-year-old Catholic school, private school, which we've had to sacrifice a lot for them to go. Luckily, we were able to get, scholarship or, help there, because we couldn't afford it otherwise. I mean, it's like the cost of going to college now.
Wow.
Like following in my parents' footsteps, prioritizing my kids' education is extremely important to us. And it was funny when I did go to UC, which was at that time, UCSB was the third ranked. I think it still is the third ranked UC, University of California, under Berkeley and I believe UCLA, and then it's Santa Barbara. It was a freaking joke, bro. Like, I came into that and into my fall freshman year, fully loaded in classes, and I was sleeping through these classes, acing them. I even had a TA pull me aside, ask me questions for my English composition course, because I was writing like A+ papers. And it's funny enough, at UCSB, I ended up having a job. I created a side job for me to earn extra money so I could buy records for, because at that time I was DJing and records were expensive. I would write people's papers for them, their term papers, and I guaranteed a B or better. It was $20 a page. And if I got worse than that, which I only did once, which was ironically enough for my sister, I would give half your money back. And I was like so well prepared for that from Servite that I was writing people's papers in my sleep. And I would only be like a social sciences or an English lit or something like that. I wouldn't get into heavy technical papers where I have to really know the subject matter. But if it was something like around like the social sciences, sociology, psych, or literature, or, that kind of stuff, I would knock out papers left and right. I had it down, man. So that was how I literally funded my DJ vinyl habit.
That's greatness. So you go to school, you graduate with a film degree, then what happens?
Yeah, I graduated with a film degree and a minor in history. And then at that time, I had become a raging DJ. So my crew, 12 Monkeys, and For the People, we were throwing full moon parties up in the mountains of Santa Barbara. I had a weekly promotion I was doing in Santa Barbara called The Zoo at Zello, and we were bringing in big time DJs from all over the country. We were throwing 10,000 person raves in San Francisco and Oakland, and I'm like 19, 20, 21 doing this. So I actually come out of school not even caring about film. At my senior year, I barely went to class. I was so focused on my entrepreneurial pursuits already around promotion and DJing. I was a paid. What was
your, not to cut you off, what was your goal there? Like, what were you going to do? Like, were you going to become like a big, like, music star?
I had no goals. Okay. I was completely living in the moment, Drew. I was completely lost. I had become actually at this time I had pulled out of it. I had become an atheist at one point, and I was very lost at Santa Barbara. It was a party school. I was finding myself. I was coming out of a place in a time in high school where I was considering going into the priesthood at one point. While I was this punk rock rebel, I was also very captivated by the Catholic Church, and I was seeking that word I have, which we'll get into later, like that mystical accord, that the spiritual path. And so it was actually doing a heavy dose of mushrooms at UC Santa Barbara that tied it all back together, and I could see like how this beautiful realm and things were connected through some divine creative force. And that pulled me out of the atheist, sort of ethos and back towards the spiritual path. But I was still really lost. I was partying a lot. I had discovered, booze and weed coming out of, being more of a straight edge kid in high school. So, and I could handle it really well. I was very functional. So I became a professional DJ because I loved the art of DJing. I loved performing. I loved and I still do it today. So obviously that was a skill set that I came into this place with. And so, but I had no idea. Like I was like throwing parties and doing stuff. I had no idea what my plan was. And actually after I graduated, I was sleeping on couches, working at Urban Outfitters and DJing every night. And my parents ended up coming up and taking like a year into that, said, "You're moving home. We're taking you out of here. You need to find yourself. You are completely lost." I was waking up to a 4-foot bong load and starting my day, and
aren't you making bank DJing though? You're not making any money?
I'm making money, but it's like I'm a club DJ in Santa Barbara playing for drunk kids. Like I'm not touring. Like I did get to go, I'd play raves and stuff, and I got to play some big parties and undergrounds and stuff, but it's not like keep in mind, this is like late 90s or early 2000s at this point. DJ culture is not what it is now. Like EDM was just starting to come around. Like it was, Coachella was just starting. So you didn't have the big DJ culture that you have now. It was still very underground, and especially what I was playing. So it was, I was making enough like to scratch by, but to cover my vinyl cost and my beer, my 40s and feed myself. But I was literally living, when my parents came up to get me, dude, I was living with a bunch of like promoters and college kids in this 2-story house on the east side of Santa Barbara on the stoop. So the stairs would come up to the second floor, and there was like a stoop kind of thing right here. And it was just like maybe a 5x5 space. I put a futon there and I was living there, and like right by the bathroom. And I wasn't paying rent. I was helping with utilities, and I was just basically this guy who's a promoter who living up the top of that top floor of that house. I was like his DJ. And so he was like my pimp. And and so in a way, so my parents just came up and they were like, "We're getting you the hell out of here." So I moved home. I ended up getting a job at Nordstrom, actually selling women's shoes, which was incredible. I really loved that. And then I went to start to go intern in Hollywood. My dad was like, "What are you going to do with your life? You got this, you're a film major. Are you going to be in film or what?" I was like, yeah. So I started to like go look at
pause. I got to hear, you can't just say you love selling women's shoes and then run over that. What's that all about?
Dude, the greatest job you could ever have as a 21, 22-year-old guy. You got to wear a suit every day, look super sharp, and talk to beautiful women all day.
Okay.
It was a hustle because it was commission based. So you decided what your income was going to be on how much you could sell in a given day. You're working at Nordstrom, who really takes care of their employees. And so I went into that only because my homie that went to school with me was a manager in the Santa Barbara one. And he hooked me up with the manager at this one in Brea Mall. I'd moved back home to Yorba Linda. And so I was already kind of a shoo-in for the job. I walked in and
that wasn't, no pun intended.
Yeah. And I was actually working with all these veterans they were like guys that had been there for 20 years selling shoes.
Wow.
They're
like
called
Al Bundy. I mean, not Ted Bundy.
Al Bundy. Yeah. Maybe some Ted Bundys there. But this is the thing, like Al Bundy was not a player. Like these guys were hustlers. And there was this guy, Lonnie, who had been there for 20 years with a mustache, short guy. And he was a lifer, what we called shoe dog. And that's how Nordstrom actually got its start, was selling women's shoes in Seattle. So that was like their game. And they were considered the best in the United States. So working there was quite an honor, actually, in the like shoe world. And so I got completely sort of in like just into the shoe, engulfed in the shoe world. And I ended up, so while I was doing this, I was promoting my own night in Costa Mesa as doing a club night. So I was doing that still, and I lost my ass on a contract, and I owed like $1,000 to the club. And all this stuff was just falling down on me. I actually told my dad. My dad's like, "What are you gonna do?" Because I didn't want to go be someone's bitch in Hollywood. I didn't want to move my way up as a PA or an assistant. I just felt that was gross. And I was already like super into conspiracy at this time. So while I was working at Nordstrom on my lunch breaks, I'd go over to Borders Books and I would go right to the metaphysical section, all the conspiracy section. And I started reading Carlos Castaneda. I started reading David Icke. In fact, like a David Icke book fell out of the bookshelf onto my foot. And I'd never heard of this guy. And I look, and it's The Biggest Secret, I believe is the name of the book. And I was like, what is this? And I became obsessed with reading these David Icke books. I was like, oh, it's the reptilians and all that. It makes so much sense. So at that point, I was already seeing through a lot of the lies around the Hollywood machine and sort of like where it all came from, and what Hollywood is. And it's the witch's wand, and it's all these dark occulted background and stuff. And like, I was really, obsessed and still am about cinema, but I didn't want to be involved with that. But I wanted to figure out how I could still make my own projects. And so my dad, sat me down one day, and he had found like a weed bag, like a little baggie when he was doing my laundry. And so he said, what are you doing in your life? What is your plan here? And what are you good at? And I was like, Dad, I'm good at I'm good at producing stuff. I'm good at bringing people together, seeing what has got some quality behind it, whether that be a script or an idea, and then seeing the whole thing like come to fruition, whether that be a club night, what I was promoting, whether that be seeing an assortment of shoes that a lovely lady really needs. So anyways, I like stood up to my dad for the first time. He's like, okay, I see. Okay. Go make that happen. So at that point, I had been DJing a lot back in Santa Barbara. I was like going back and forth, and I had some friends with money, and I was really had become, quite obsessed with not reality television in the sense of like Laguna Beach, if you remember that show, and those kind of early shows, which I would watch because I found them culturally really interesting. But I was really into Anthony Bourdain because I was kind of a big foodie, and I was almost considering going to chef school, culinary school. So I was really into his show, No Reservations, which just started, which was this travel food show. I believe it was on the Travel Network, Travel Channel.
Wasn't that the CNN show he did? Wasn't it CNN?
That was way later.
Okay.
Way later. He started first on Food Network. It was a half-hour show, and then he went to the Travel Network. I believe it was owned by the same company, and it was called No Reservations. And he would go to different cities and different places in the world, and it was sort of this cool gonzo journalist style of him just having his own take on these places. And he would go meet friends and eat and drink, and it was really cool. And I really enjoyed that sort of reality journalism travel side. And I wanted to do something similar, but around things that I knew, DJing, bar culture. Because, being a bar DJ, I knew all the bartenders, the promoters, the door guys. So anyways, I ended up coming up with this idea with a chef friend of mine called Eats and Beats. And the idea was it would be a reality cooking show for MTV, where we would basically show kids, like college kids and young kids in their 20s, how to properly put together a meal for a party for your friends under $10 a head, or at $10 a head. That's fresh, locally grown, and seasonal. And then also how to provide the entertainment. So we had like this rock star chef friend of mine who came up with the idea with me, Chad, who I found out later had a really heavy drug habit. But
many such cases. Yeah.
And we found a friend who was very financially set, let's say, whose father, is the owner of the Indiana Pacers and stuff. So she believed in me and cut me a check to do my first pilot called Eats and Beats. And now I'm 22 years old. I had gone to Santa Barbara. I had actually transferred to the Nordstrom there. So now I'm selling women's shoes at Santa Barbara Nordstrom. I got a little apartment with a friend right by the freeway. So I had moved back to Santa Barbara to do this show, Eats and Beats. And so I'm 22 and I've got a big check in my pocket. And now
how much she cut you? What was your budget? You're a producer, basically, is what you're saying. That was your.
I am now a producer at 22 years old, and the director as well. And let's just say it was a pretty hefty check for those days.
Okay.
It was $30,000
For a pilot.
for a pilot.
Okay.
Which now keep in mind, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a film school guy that had done some, basic production stuff on like 16 and 35 millimeter. I'd done some animation stuff. I had no background in television. I had taken like the television course, the history of television and stuff. I had no idea what a sizzle reel is, what a showrunner is, like the proper pathway towards actually getting a show on a network television.
Right.
I'm just this kid with big balls and a lot of machismo and a big dream and big vision. And I'm a good salesman because, I've always been a good salesman. I mean, I used to sell knives door to door, Cutco knives, and I've always been in sales. So in college,
as somebody met you in person, you're very, your gait, you're very like, I can trust you. Like I know I can trust you when I meet you.
Yeah, I'm an open book. I'm an open book, and I'm passionate. I'm a Virgo, and I want to make stuff happen. And so, I wasn't bullshitting anybody. I was like, I'm going to do this pilot because I think we got something here. I think we got a really cool idea. And DJ culture was starting to get really popular at this time. And so the idea was merging DJ culture, food culture in a hip way for MTV. So funny enough, I ended up pulling it off, and we had a premiere at this club called Wildcat in Santa Barbara, red carpet premiere with all the people in it. My friend who was the assistant chef in it, she actually went on, and I was a pretty good casting person because the girl, Virginia, who I casted in it, she ended up going on this show called Hell's Kitchen, you may know of. And pretty well-known show. And she took second place actually a couple years later. And she was just beautiful brunette chef, just starting out. So she was like the assistant chef, the assistant on the show. And then Chad was the crazy rock star chef. That's a whole other story about him. And and then the buddy, so the idea was like they would go find someone who wanted to throw a party. And so the guy who was throwing the party, my buddy Nate, he ended up going on Survivor and doing quite well on that show. So these are just like people I knew in Santa Barbara that I cast for the show that ended up actually going on major network television shows. Long story short, though, I got totally sort of taken advantage of by a lot of people who way overcharged me and didn't deliver. And we ended up, our tape was okay. It was kind of awkward and weird. But I had all like these special like graphic effects on the opening that was really hip and cool that we spent way too much money on. And the premiere was fun and I had a big DJ play it, but we never sold it. It was just not the right thing. Like what network's going to buy a pilot from a no-name person that's just out of nowhere that nobody knows? That was really weird and it's totally offbeat idea. So, but what that did is it opened up my education to specifically like how it all works. And it was sort of the school of hard knocks, but it was also me being my own sort of guiding light and refusing to work within the system. And that would be sort of the trend of my entire career in Hollywood is I always worked on the fringes as my own producer, my own director. And even when I did work for some companies, we were on the fringes. And while that was quite insane at sometimes, it was also cool because it was building me towards what I am now, which is this idea of a self-governed, self-embodied individual who refused to play the game and who refused to sort of get on my knees for anybody at any time.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what this show is. It's, Maverick and the Machine. It's about people that were successful in whatever way that is in clown world and Barnum world and did not sacrifice their integrity in the process. I'm trying to see if there's some sort of through line through all these people. Like why do you think you have that gene in you? I have the same gene. What is that?
Dude, I have a recognition for talent. I always have. So like
me too, by the way, that's my thing too.
I had mentioned that, I was coming up in the ska scene of Orange County. And I remember playing this little tape on the way to skiing up to Mammoth when I was very young. And they had just come out and it was this tape called Trapped in a Box. And it was this little band called No Doubt. And no one had heard of them. And I was playing it for my parents. And they're like, she's pretty good. I'm like, she is going to be a massive, massive star. fast forward, that's Gwen Stefani. She becomes this huge pop star. I saw this little band called Blink in a garage at a house party in San Diego. I turned to my friend and said, these guys are going to be so huge. They're going to take over the whole punk rock world. That became Blink 186. And then one other thing, I saw Weezer. We ditched school my sophomore year of high school. I had a bong water spilled all over me on the way there. K-Rock had announced this free show of this new band called Weezer. It was in a strip mall in Huntington Beach between a Starbucks and like a car, like an Ace or something. It was in the most random place. And it's Weezer playing a live free show. And I said to my buddies, these guys are going to be massive. I've just always had that ability just to like spot talent. And I did do some casting stuff for films. And that was also with DJs, and that was also now with how I book the podcast. So yeah, I don't know. I just kind of popped into this realm with that ability. As I had told my dad in that sit down, Dad, I have an innate talent I have an innate ability to recognize talent, and I know how to put it together. I know how to connect people that I know that need to be connected so that beautiful things can happen. And that's kind of my special power that I have here.
Well, that's funny. That's mine too. One of mine, like I've done that 20 times with actors, like young actors. Like that guy's good. He's going to be big. Directors too. This guy knows what he's doing. Yeah. I've done that so many times. And when I talk about making films and stuff, that's the one area that you can't teach that. And that is the one area, I don't want to go off on filmmaking, but like, if you don't have good talent in your film, if you don't have actors that can at least pull that part off, it's over. And that's 6% of the time that people cast the wrong people. And it's just one of those things you just can't teach. It's a talent or a taste for
that's
quality.
What makes a great producer. Like people don't understand what producers do.
They don't.
It's just like the money douchebag who throws the money.
It can be, but yeah, a real producer.
Those usually aren't great films, or that you have an amazing director who pulls it through. But like a proper producer is just on the level almost as the auteur director, in that they are seeing all those working parts come together so the director's vision can be laid out appropriately. But one of my favorite directors is Francis Ford Coppola, and he was up there for me on probably the Mount Rushmore of directors. And and the thing that he has is he has that innate skill to cast. He has that. He is like, if you think of like some of his early films on who he cast, I mean, it's insane. What's it called? The gang, the one about the book that he did with it was like one of Tom Cruise's first movies. And God, my kids watch it all the time.
Which one are you talking about?
I keep wanting to say The Searchers. It's not The Searchers. It's why do you think of that? This is really ironic that you brought up Coppola, because to take it back, what you're talking about, producers and auteur directors, finding a great producer is almost as rare. It's true. I've worked with one guy in my whole career that I was like, that guy is an amazing producer. And this dude used to work at the studio I worked at in LA, and he would be on the phone all day long, and he would call anybody at any time, like big executive producers at studios. He'd get him on the phone. Like, he was so good at what he did. I was like, man, I can't do that. I get it now. I see it. And are you there? Yeah. I'm The Outsiders.
You froze. You look like you froze.
So I was looking, The Outsiders.
Oh, The Outsiders. Yeah. Oh, that movie. That was an incredible cast, actually.
Incredible. I mean, Matt
Dillon in his prime was, I think, he wasn't the greatest actor, but he's one of the best looking, coolest guys ever in cinema.
He just had that machismo. He had that air about him.
Did you see? You saw? What was the one he did after that? That wasn't popular, but it was a way better film.
You talking about Rumblefish?
Yeah, that's a great film, man.
Film, dude. There is a scene when they're walking through the city, and they're just kind of like going to club or something.
He does that revert with the shadow on the wall, dude, and the music that Stuart Copeland from The Police did. Great soundtrack, man. I mean, love
that was a masterpiece that almost nobody knows about.
I know. And you talk about the casting. He had Mickey Rourke, Dennis Hopper, Matt Dillon. Lawrence Fishburne was in that.
Lawrence Fishburne.
Sean Penn's brother was in that. Chris Penn was in that.
Yeah. And what's her name? The beautiful blonde.
Oh man, I forgot about what was her name. She was great. I want to say Natalie Wood, but it's not Natalie Wood. It's
it'll come to me.
She's not a blonde, she's a brunette, isn't she?
She's kind of a brunette, but Diane Lane.
Diane Lane.
She's so gorgeous in that.
You know who's great in that? Who's the unsung? We're going to go off on films here, but remember the hophead that Matt Dillon fought in the beginning of the film that cut him with the glass?
Oh yeah.
That guy was great. He's like, that was a really great performance. I love the king of bit casting they say was Hitchcock, but I think maybe Scorsese is the king of bit casting, where like little parts were just like this guy just blew it out of the water.
He's very well known for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say Tarantino too.
Tarantino's great. You're right.
He's a great character cast. He casts like these classic, character actors.
I think about like Kill Bill. I think it was Kill Bill, the guy that was the manager of the strip club. That guy was great. You know what I'm talking about? He's like, he was doing blow and he's like, come on, maybe be somebody. Like, that's a funny scene. Yeah, he does that. He drinks.
How about the guy who's he's so creepy in it, but he's the nurse with the Vaseline, in
Kill Bill?
Yeah, and Kill Bill.
I don't remember. I know what you're talking about. I don't remember him.
Yeah, he's just like such an amazing. He plays that role so well. I mean, Tarantino's up there with, and I used to say Tarantino is one of my favorite directors for his style and stuff, but his tone and stuff, like now, it's just in his. I don't know. He's kind of fallen off the pedestal for me.
Well, his editor died. That's the whole thing. His editor died.
Yeah.
So that editor, they used to get in these like drag him out fights, crying, screaming, and his films now, again, I'm not criticizing Tarantino as a great director, but in my personal opinion, the scenes go on way too long. The dialogue goes on way too long. But I mean, people love the films.
That's kind of his shtick, though. I thought
Once Upon a
Time in Hollywood was really fun. Really.
Now, here's the thing. That was a masterpiece. That was a I love that film. Yeah. So that was like he came back. I wasn't a big a fan of like, the World War II one he did, and it's just that scene in where they're playing cards. It went on for like 10 minutes too long. I'm like, I get it. And you could tell it's him talking the entire time through all the characters.
Yeah.
And more power to him. But anyway, so we're getting off track. So, and the other thing is you brought up Coppola, his last film. I don't know if you saw Megalopolis.
My son really wants to watch it with me, so I've been holding off. Now I've heard there's like such a different perspectives on it.
Don't have anything that will induce suicide in the room, because it is one of the I love Coppola. I went and saw it in the theaters. I'm not kidding. It's the worst film I've ever seen in my entire life. I've never seen anything so awful. Like there's something about it.
Dude, why?
Oh my, I can't even describe it. It's not even like so bad it's good. It was like 2 hours it's 2 hours and 40 minutes of just torture. There's so many things. There's not a single likable thing about that film. It is so awful on every level. And he produced that himself. So
this was like his passion project he'd been working on for like 30 years.
Yeah, apparently he was stoned every day on set and screwing around, and he just nobody, because when he did Apocalypse Now, he had, even though he did finance his house and everything, he always had producers like, that's not gonna, because if you watch the Apocalypse Now director's cut,
the redux,
like all 20 minutes is the worst. Like, get that out of the film, and they made the right decision. Usually the director's cut's better, but it wasn't. But he needed a producer in this film. I mean, it is. Oh, wow. You have to watch it just to see. I would like to see your opinion of it.
I'm very interested because
awful. Like
a grand question is when a director, and this is a general trend for most directors, they fall off if they try to keep going in their older years, their work just isn't there. And it's many would say it's a young man's game. Now, some would say Hitchcock, maybe not so much, maybe,
define young man, because I think the best work they do is in their 50s and 60s.
So that's still a young man to me. I'm talking when they're hitting their 70s and 80s. Generally.
Francis
Ford Coppola's in his late 70s, right?
He's in his 80s. I think
he's 80s. So you find when they're trying to still. I mean, I guess Clint Eastwood, he still kind of was holding pretty strong in his 70s and 80s. Like I don't think he's a great filmmaker, but he makes fun. Gran Turismo, that's a pretty feel good, cool, fun movie.
Kind of corny. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I think Clint Eastwood is the greatest presence in the history of cinema. Not the greatest actor, and as an actor, the greatest presence on screen. I think. I mean, he's like. I love Clint Eastwood. I'm a huge Clint Eastwood fan. I love that guy.
I mean, my favorite Western of all time is The Good, and the Bad, and the Ugly.
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Yeah, that's a great one. I think we talked about this in Acapulco.
We did. And I mean, Unforgiven is a phenomenal, like neo-Western. It's up there in my top 10 of best Westerns of all time. It is a phenomenal film. And that's a great work of art that he pulled off. So that was probably at his very peak. But
as director, yeah, he's not. I mean, he does adequate. I'm not crazy about his films either. They're a little corny, a little on the nose.
Yeah, I would say except Unforgiven is pretty money, man. Like
that, he directed that?
Yeah. That was like
that's a
tour de force. It won best film and
yeah. Great final scene. The final scene is amazing.
And Gene Hackman, God rest, in peace. Yeah. I've been on a big Gene Hackman kick since he passed. I just watched The Conversation last night.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And I watched Behind Enemy Lines, a couple.
French Connection. You got to watch French Connection.
That's on my list.
Yeah,
I've been on a Michael Mann kick this week too. So I watched Behind Enemy Lines. I just watched Ollie. I'm watching almost a film every night. That's just I'm a film nerd. So I hadn't seen Ollie in a while. The Muhammad Ali story that Michael Mann had directed. It's pretty good.
It's not bad. Yeah. Did you? Now, can you do foreign
films?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love foreign films.
I mean, okay, so because Italians are doing some great stuff right now. There's a director named Paolo Sorrentino.
Okay, I haven't watched any modern Italian. I mean,
have you seen The Great Beauty? It was out. This was like this may be almost 10 years now, but it won foreign the Academy Awards back when they were actually worth something.
Yeah,
it's called The Great Beauty. It's a masterpiece. I check it out. Yeah,
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Fellini. We talked a bit about that.
Yeah.
At Acapulco, like he's in my top 5.
Well, one more thing, and I'll get on with this. If you like The Great, our audience is like, God, get me out of here. If you watch The Great Beauty, and you like his work, go watch The Consequences of Love second.
Okay,
it's incredible. Yeah, they're both amazing, and the design of The Consequences of Love is amazing. He uses a lot of dolly shots, as you know. Anyways, we're getting way too in the weeds here with the film, so. Your producer show.
I think people that listen to this, they know you're a filmmaker, so they probably expect a little bit of this, right? And yeah, I will say the Italian like neo-realism is some of my favorite stuff. Antonioni and Fellini and I loved all that stuff in film school. A lot of people fell asleep to it, but I actually really loved those long dolly shots and like the long takes and stuff when they're done.
8.5. Or was it? Was it 8? Well, no, 8.5. What was the?
Well, 8.5 is Fellini. It's like
8.5. Yes, I love that. Yeah. And then I loved. Mastriani. That's like I love that actor. Yeah.
Dude, what a G of an actor, right?
Yeah, he's such a G. Yeah. They just don't make him like that anymore. They just don't
they don't.
Yeah.
And Kurosawa too. He had Mifune. Like that guy was like in every one of his films. For me, he was, he's speaking of, we were talking a bit about this in Mexico as well. Like, those great spaghetti Westerns that made Clint Eastwood the household name. Like those were all inspired by Kurosawa, and so those films are fun. So my youngest son, I've got him into film from a very young age. So he wants to be a filmmaker. He wants to be a director. It's funny. I was telling you this, like the teacher, he's in like 6th grade when the teacher asked him this, like, who's your favorite director then? He's like, Kubrick. And I'm like, no, but he hasn't seen. Okay, so he hasn't seen much Kubrick because Kubrick's pretty gnarly for like a 9-year-old to be watching. He had seen like of course, what had he seen at that time?
Well, that's about the age I saw Clockwork Orange. About 9.
Wow, that's way too early.
It affected me. That scene where they go into the woman's house and cut her clothes off and all that. That really affected me as a kid. That stuck with me.
Yeah, that's
when he's singing in the rain.
He's been wanting to watch it, and I said, not until you're 16, man.
Yeah, you got to get a little older because it does. I don't
that
regret
is such
seeing
a
it,
psychologically deep film.
Yeah,
and it really goes deep into the, like the subconscious of every human and like the dark side that we have, and then like how society aims to manipulate and control it, and then. It has all these side parallels too, just about mania and evil. And, Kubrick was so concerned after that movie because it became such a pop cultural phenomenon and people were dressing up like those hooligans or whatever they were called. What were they called? I forgot what their little gang was called. But they had like the crotch.
The druids, right?
Something like that.
Yeah. The droogs or something like that. Yeah.
He was concerned that they were going to come on his property and beat him. So he actually drove around in his golf cart with a shotgun, I heard, because he was.
Well, he pulled the movie. He went to the studio. There was a number one movie in the world. And he said, either you pull it or I'll never make a film for you again. They're like, okay. And they pulled it, which is incredible. That just says how great he was that he could just go in and get the number one movie in the world pulled out of the theaters.
My son will not watch that yet. He's watched 2001 a bunch, and he's watched I let him watch it. He's begging me to watch it. So he watched The Shining. And I actually had to turn it off when we hit the bathroom scene with the naked, like old chick. So I was like, this is too intense for you. We'll come back in a couple years. So then he's now 11. We watched it again, the whole thing, and he loves it. He has all his theories about it, the Native Americans and the blood on the wall in the kitchen. And it's pretty cool. Like he's seeing the genius of Kubrick at that young age. Who knows? Yeah. So their thing, he and my, I was telling you this, it's pretty cool. He and my older son, they have like a little production team called I think it's called M&M Productions, because they're both Miles and Mateo, and they make stop action films with Legos, and that's like their thing. And I think I might have shown you. Did I show you the action one they did?
No,
it was like hyper violent. Oh, okay. I'll have to send it to you.
You talked about it, but I didn't see it. I want to see it.
I showed it to Falconer and a couple of people and they were dying of laughter. I mean, it is so violent. And like, I will give them their production skills have gotten really good with using paint and different smoke effects and stuff for like gunfire and blood splatter and stuff. But they were inspired, and they hadn't seen these films by the John Wick films. So that'll give you a little context. But, these are boys that are expressing themselves and through, and there is a hyper violence in our culture for sure. It's kind of funny. Like
there's hyper violence in men. I mean, that's just when you're a kid.
Men, of course.
Destroy stuff. Yeah.
Like little boys like to destroy things. And so this is an outlet for them. And the way that it was sort of punk and skating was an outlet for me at that age. They are embracing this through the art of film, which I think is pretty cool.
That's amazing. And the fact that he appreciates Kubrick's 2001 at that age, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened? So you do the eats and beats. I forgot, where do we leave off? So where are you now? 'Cause this stuff gets crazy. You told me the story. I want you to tell the audience this crazy story. So then what happens?
So then,
unless you don't want to.
I love telling these stories. I'm an open book, man.
Okay.
At that time, I was like very much partying also and DJing late nights, but I'm a hard worker. So I would like get up literally after being up, because I get off work at 2 a.m. after party at our house. I live with like 4 other guys. I'm 22 years old. Like literally there'd be a cab line outside our house that just the cabs knew to bring people to our house. And so it was like, you knew that if you could walk to our house, you could get a cab, or you get dropped off. There was always an after party going. So oftentimes I would literally be going to sleep at like 4 or 5 in the morning. And then I had to be at work at 8:15. So I would get up like 2 hours of sleep, puke on my way to work, and then crush it all day selling shoes, because I'd have like this sort of young man's hangover energy. It's like this like weird jittery energy where I had no inhibitions, and I would do really well selling shoes. I was actually a top dog, a top seller in.
Are you stoned at work? Are you like smoking a bowl?
No. Like coffee is my best friend. I'm probably reeking of booze, but I'm a good looking guy in a suit, and I'm really, I've always been very, just charismatic. And so able to embrace that loopiness of like a night of drinking. And this is a young man's game, right? Like now, if I tried to do that, I'd be so wrecked I couldn't get out of bed, right?
And you'd look like a fool. You'd look like you were just a drunk. Whereas we were a kid, it's funny. It's kind of fun and funny kind of thing.
Yeah. So, oftentimes I was still drunk, and there were some times where I'd get sent home, but I was such a good producer that they would need me there. And so then I was doing that. And then the Eats and Beats thing kind of flopped. And I was just really focusing on DJing, but I was inspired again to try again. So I was really hyper involved in this downtown Santa Barbara scene that was really sort of incestuous. People were hooking up with everybody. It was really interesting, and it was like a lot of money there because it's next to Montecito, and there's like a lot of like, you know, especially working at Nordstrom's, a lot of quote unquote MILFs that would come in, and then they would hit on us. And there was a lot of these guys, you know, me included. You would end up at some Montecito mansion with some like 40-year-old beautiful.
I was going to ask you about that. Was that that was a common thing, wasn't it?
That was kind of a common thing. Yeah. I worked in salon, which is like the high end shoes. And so, you know, I'd like have $1,000, $2,000 pop, and then I'd get a phone number. And I mean, I would have women not wear underwear, you know, all sorts of stuff that come in that were my regulars. And so that was like the scene there. And
you prick. I was in Pittsburgh, like working in a warehouse or something.
And so then I would end up I got sucked into the scene, and but I still was very driven, and I wanted to do my next show. So I came up with this idea called State Street, which was the main street that all the bars and restaurants and stuff are on. And I wanted to do a reality show a la like Laguna Beach kind of, which was really popular at that time on MTV, of these like beautiful bartenders that were all like kind of making, I mean, bartenders were the superstars in Santa Barbara. You didn't go to the bars and stuff for the DJs. You didn't go for like the acts. You went to see your favorite bartenders. They were like superstars, and it was super high volume, really busy bars, and they were really good at what they were doing. They would drink with you. They would party with you. They were all beautiful and really, you know, charismatic and like cool people. And they all hung out together. They'd go on Vegas trips. They were really into gambling and like.
That sounds like a no-brainer for a show,
right? So I was. So, anyways, what I did is I pretended to be an MTV exec. I did a casting call. I went on the local radio. I got a bunch of like film.
Whoa, what do you mean you pretended to be an MTV exec? What did you do?
So I literally went on local radio and said, "Yeah, I'm coming from MTV to cast a new show called State Street." Where we're going to cast, it's going to basically coming out as a pilot. And it's going to be a reality show around the lives of bartenders on State Street. So if you're a bartender or a bar back or work in the bar scene of Santa Barbara, come to casting, you know, this Saturday at 9 a.m. at blah, blah, blah. I had a line around the block. Like every single bartender came out. I had gone to my old film department and gotten some some PAs and stuff that were film students, and I made it look all professional. I borrowed my buddy's MG, so I would look like I was driving a Mercedes, and I dressed nice, and I came in and I cast a killer cast. I went on local radio that morning and stuff. And I mean, I'm like a 23-year-old DJ pulling this off.
I mean, how big is Santa Barbara? They didn't know who you were already?
They did know who I was, but I had gone to LA and had come back.
Okay.
And so people just kind of considered that I was now working in the biz. And so anyways, we ended up having this beautiful cast, and I had some friends just go out. We went out while they were working and shot this sort of sizzle reel of our own making. Which is just what that is just capturing lots of footage and then editing it together, some sexy music to sell the concept. And then my buddy who had gone to film school with me, he was now working for this guy. And this is when it gets crazy. This guy, Houston Curtis, who was the best at backyard wrestling. He had made all his money doing this straight to tape compilation called The Best of Backyard Wrestling that used to sell during Howard Stern's show on E! Entertainment Network late night. It was kind of like, you know, Girls Gone Wild, but it was just like he just had all these people sending tapes in the Midwest of people that it was like this huge trend where you would just have your own wrestling in your backyard, where like guys jumping off their roofs on people with breaking folding tables over them. So he just had made this compilation and made millions off this.
Well, there was not to cut you up, but there was just for the audience, there was an era that don't already know this. There was like an era, a short window where like these videotapes would come out with like these crazy sort of underground cult culture things like Girls Gone Wild, which was
pre-internet.
Pre-internet, the backyard wrestling. They would go, it was viral before the internet, basically.
Best of Brawling Babes. Like, and he basically did all these, like he created his company to just essentially buy all these properties and put them out, distribute them through his channels. So he was actually in a poker game, which we'll get in a little bit later, with the guy who started Girls Gone Wild. And he was
like
also
non-pornographic smut is what it was, basically.
Yeah. And basically, and there was this one called Bum Fights, which was horrendous. It was these guys in Vegas that would go around and they would have bums fight each other for money. And they would like tie up bums and pretend to be the crocodile hunter. And it was just really lowbrow stuff. And this was stuff like in the 90s that was really popular because it was like, even like you'd probably heard of the tape that had gone around. It was like was it like people literally getting killed and stuff? What was that one called?
Faces of Death.
Faces of Death.
You're right. And also, remember, were you around for the Jerky Boys?
Oh yeah, of course.
That was like insane. That was like literally like cassette tapes. It was audio.
And you know that Adam not Adam Carolla, what's his name, had a tape like that too that had gone super viral that we used to listen to that was really raunchy. It'll come to me, this, you know, Happy Gilmore and Adam
Sandler.
Adam Sandler. Do you remember that tape he had? It was like him doing bits like the Jerky Boys kind of, and it was really raunchy. It was like his stand-up kind of. That tape went around a lot in our group too in the early 90s. But yeah, so coming out of that, like, so anyways, I go and I was just told, make sure it's super sexy. All the girls are hot and he'll probably pick it up. So I went and like went to LA. He was in the Valley, of course, pitched him on this. He's like, I like it. Cool. Awesome. I'll get a producer going. We're going to come up. We're going to shoot a proper tape. He was a showrunner at this time. So he brought this fancy producer up. We actually scripted it more than I wanted to, La Laguna Beach. We shot it. It was a really nice tape. And then all of a sudden now, like, I'm going in with him into MTV, into VH1, into Real TV or Court TV, all these places that he had relationships with. And now he's bringing me in to work with him. And so now all of a sudden it's becoming like a real thing. And MTV was really into it and was considering it. And I was like getting the champagne ready. And then we got a call that they had passed. And then basically what we found out is that what they were doing is they were stealing ideas and just creating their own.
Many such cases.
Yeah. But so now I'm in. So now I'm like working with this cat, and I'm as an associate producer working on shows and stuff.
What's his name again? What's the guy's name?
Houston Curtis.
Okay.
And so I told you this story in Mexico. It's pretty wild. So he starts a company called Legend Group, and with Chuck Banner, the son of Bob Banner, who was a famous variety show producer who had done like the Jimmy Dean Show and all the way up to like Solid Gold. And he had done like these variety shows from the 60s, 70s into the 80s. And we were taking all of his catalog and remastering and putting it out. And then also working in music and television. And so they brought me in as a VP and a producer to develop stuff. And so little do I know, this entire business is being funded through a poker game, an underground poker game that Houston Curtis was involved with, which ended up being turned into a Hollywood motion picture called Molly's Game. And Houston there's like a famous scene in that movie where he takes a total beat down by this trust fund kid that doesn't know how to play poker, and basically spins out of control and loses like $250,000 of the company's funds essentially in this poker game in one night. And this is all now out in the public. It's all in the past. There's a book written about it, movie made.
It's a good film. It was a decent film too. I watched it on a plane flight once.
Oh yeah. I'm trying to remember who directed it. It was the
woman who the lead. I can't remember her name. She's an excellent actress.
Oh, Jessica Chastain.
Yeah. She was the wife in Tree of Life.
Aaron Sorkin directed that.
Okay, yeah, that's a big name.
So and Kevin Costner's in it, and Idris Elba, and then Michael Cera plays the psychotic player X, who I told you, I don't know if I should say out in the public who that actually is. I don't think it matters.
Yeah, who cares?
Tobey Maguire. So Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man is a psychopath in real life. And
did you meet Tobey Maguire?
I never did.
Okay.
But I knew this specifically from Houston, that he loved to see people lose all their money in poker. He loved to just crush people in poker to the point where it was like a bit of psychopathy around it. And so you'll see that Michael Cera sort of plays that a bit in this movie. And then this was also like Matt Damon would come and play, Ben Affleck would come and play in this game, and a bunch of like shady, weird Hollywood people. And so at this time, I am DJing full time in Hollywood. I'd moved now. This is fast forward now. I'm like getting married. I'm traveling around. Like I'd done multiple different show concepts and stuff.
How old are you at this point? You're in your late 20s kind of thing?
Late 20s, yeah.
Okay.
20.
Okay.
Now I'm moving into like 27, 28.
So you're working for this Houston guy. You're DJing at night. You know, you're doing the Hollywood thing right now, and you get married, which is
yeah. And for a long time, I was actually living in San Francisco because my wife was a travel nurse and she was working up there, and it covered our rent. So I was like driving down to LA back and forth a lot, which is insane.
That's like what's that, 8 hours?
Dude, it's like 6. Yeah. I mean,
it's brutal. It's like nonstop traffic the entire time.
Yeah. It's not fun. And, yeah, a lot of books on tape, actually, at the time. I did the whole entire Game of Thrones book series on tape. So anyways, yeah, so I was like deep in this weird, like alternative, the fringes of Hollywood, working on TV shows, you know, that stuff that had gone on MTV, and we had a blackjack show on CBS. And I was also working in music, and meanwhile, this company's sort of spinning out because of the debt that I didn't even know about through this poker game. And Houston's a really good poker player too. And that's, you know, he actually now he has a book out about card tricks and stuff. And he's now back in the Midwest. And so it was sort of like this whole fall from grace, where I saw like the rise and fall of this company that I was in. And a lot of characters, a lot of crazy nights, a lot of me going out and playing in these, you know, speakeasies in Hollywood, hanging out with celebrities. And there was a crazy attraction to that. I mean, there was a bit of a high. And also, you know, you're hanging out with people that are really, you know, when I'm in this scene in the underground in Hollywood. So I wasn't playing at like douchey nightclubs. These were like the speakeasies that you had to know somebody to get into. You had to roll up with 6 beautiful, you know, models, or know somebody. Like douchey actors would get denied in these places, right?
Yeah, there's a whole, people that know, there's a whole speakeasy scene in LA, like this kind of where these actors and producers have to go where they don't have to deal with the general public, basically.
Exactly. You don't go on the weekends. These are weeknight events. Weekends is sort of like the Valley comes in. And then they pay a lot of money to go in these places. But in the weeknights, yeah, you had to know the door guy to get in. And my friend just happened to like be hyper connected, and he was you know, an ex-male model slash artist and hipster. And he brought me in as the DJ to all these places. And he's one of my closest friends, and actually is a partner in Alfa Vedic, funny enough now, which we'll end up with. And so that's how I ended up meeting his father and everything, and how I got into all that. But we would just roll into these places, and I'd be DJing and be like, Prince is hanging out there, Daft Punk's hanging out there. And so it was kind of like I was hanging out with people that were at the like pinnacle of their life stream, living their hero's journey in a way that was really like impressive. Like, yeah, some of these people are dirtbags. Some of these people have questionable conscience and morality, but a lot of these people are highly successful, highly at the top of their game, artists, designers, you know, people that were doing amazing things on a really high level. And it's really cool to be hanging out with people of that caliber, you know? We can't.
Yeah, I'm getting stumbling. This is the thing about LA. Everybody thinks when somebody says they're all pedophiles or something, they've never lived there. They don't know what they're talking about. There's a lot of decent people there, and there's a lot of, like you said, very successful, high operating people, and interesting people.
Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, we got to know a lot of Academy Award winning actors and stuff. And I don't need to drop names here, but they were really cool. Like, and they would come party with us and hang out with us, and just they wanted to be with us because we were more in the art scene. We were like tapped because I was like DJing a lot of art parties and fashion shows. And so we were kind of in the art and fashion scene of LA at that time. My buddy Bryden, he had started a company called Future Heretics, and it was a punk rock sort of aesthetic fashion company with really edgy printed tees and jeans and stuff that were all hand sewn there in downtown LA by USC. And I was working with him and hanging out with him and playing these really hip, cool warehouse parties and stuff. And that was like where like the hip actors wanted to go and be seen. So it wasn't sort of like the douchey Hollywood scene. It was this sort of more artsy scene. And that was really cool. And that was in like the early 2010s. So now, and I'm still working for Houston and Legend. And I'm now also really discovering my more spiritual path and still very deep into conspiracy. And so I was like heavily online now in all these like forums and stuff around, aliens and all that stuff, and like the occult and studying all this stuff. And was very heavy into that. I was very like obsessed almost about just learning about all this stuff. So
what happens with Houston's company? Because it sounds like a crash and burn situation.
Total crash and burn. So ran out of money. None of the projects were really fulfilled. He had serious health issues too, that took him out. And basically it came down to the point where I just was one of the last people there. And I was like essentially just on autopilot. And at that point I was running my own businesses. I was doing web design. had started Alfa Vedic. So this was like now 2014. So I've been like with these guys like for 8 years in and out, trying to see this vision come true. Cause I really believed in like, the ability to do independent film. Like we were doing everything independent and independent music, and the artists that we were trying to, really prop up. John Spicer, I really believed in him. He was this young, up and coming country music star out of Southern Illinois, and became a good friend of mine. And so long story short, yeah, it all burned out. The money ran out. And I ended up just getting out of there right before it crashed and burned. And at that point, I had come to the realization that I needed to move out of this Hollywood realm. It wasn't working for me. I'd given it a decade of my life in the more fringes in the independent, but I realized that I wasn't. And I'd actually at that time started my own production company with my buddy Jeff, and we were pitching shows. We were trying to do our own reality television. We were, we were actually making tapes. Like we were going and making sizzle reels. We made a pretty interesting one about Silicon Valley at the time and the hackathons, and like this like really interesting group called Angel Hack. And it was like this one guy with all his women around him. And he ended up having this huge fall from grace because he came back to Silicon Valley after being in Asia for a while and saying how we need to manage the homeless like they do in Asia and put them to work. And like all of Silicon Valley came down on him because they're all woke, gotten super woke at that time. And it was funny. I was like, oh, dude, this is now we need to go try to resell this tape because he's like becoming like the hot thing with all this controversy. And then I realized I was like, dude, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is not my calling. My calling, and at that time we had just started Alfa Vedic, and I was like, my calling is something different. There's a reason why I never sold a show and never became a big time Hollywood producer. I wasn't meant to be in that world. And so I had this like inner calling, this inner intuition telling me, Mike, you were going against the grain of your true calling. Let's reconsider what your calling is. And so that's when I started really getting more focused on health and wellness, the spiritual path, and getting sober, and focusing on being a really good father and husband. And it was at that point that I realized I needed to get the hell out of LA and have a change. So I moved my family from Redondo Beach, in this idyllic seaside town in South Bay of Los Angeles, up to the Smith River on the border of California and Oregon. And in 2016, actually right before Trump came into office. and fully threw myself into homesteading and web development and Alfa Vedic and all that, and basically like gave up the LA lifestyle.
So when did you have your first child?
So we had our first child in 2011. We were actually living in San Francisco at that time, and I was still driving back and forth and working as trying to be a showrunner and working with Houston and that whole team. And my wife was a full-time nurse. She was a travel nurse at one point, got pregnant, actually then stopped working for a while when she was pregnant, and I was the sole breadwinner. And we had our kid, in San Francisco. And then shortly after, we had moved to Redondo Beach. Then we had our second child in 2013 in Redondo. And my wife was just a stay-at-home mom. So she was a stay-at-home mom raising our boys for the first 4 or 5 years of their life. She would maybe work one Saturday as a nurse. She's an RN at that time, but it was great. And that's what we wanted. We wanted her to be at home with the kids. And then I had a pretty flexible schedule, so I could be home with them a lot. And then I would go work in Burbank or Hollywood, set my own hours. And then, that was great. They got to have a little bit of the SoCal life, but they don't really remember it. They moved up here when they were like 2 and 4.
Same with my daughter. So what was it doesn't have to happen like right away, but like, what was the primary catalyst for your awakening, if you will? Your evolution into being a good father. I mean, not that you weren't a good father, but you know what I mean? When you really took on who you were going to be and really woke up. I know you were talking about looking at stuff and the Ike book fell in your shoe. I don't think those things are by accident, but what was like do you think the biggest catalyst in your, we'll call it, awakening?
I think it was a slow evolution for sure. And like meeting Barre Lando through Bryden, who is the founder of Alfa Vedic and who's a physician, and he's been a mentor of mine, and having those long conversations with him for 10 years through my 20s, that really helped me grow and learn. But really it was just like it was probably a late night after party one night, and I just kind of looked around, and it was just the same thing I've been doing for years. And I just saw the same people all drunk and just doing the same thing. And I saw like some of these guys that I partied with that are in their 50s and single, or some might be married but no kids. And I just had this thing hit me, like a lightning bolt hit me. And I said, it was like my higher self telling me, this is not for you. You need to get out. This is not working. And so I almost had like a bit of an anxiety attack, like a panic attack at that party. And the room was spinning, and it was just kind of like really intense. And that was when I started to make the changes. And I told my wife, I'm like, I need to be here more. We need to figure this out. And also I was feeling that LA was not the right place to raise my kids. I was also concerned about something coming. I felt I was also had this deep intuition. I knew something was coming that was going to be really big, that was going to make it very challenging to live in LA, which fast forward would be COVID. That was the other reason. So we just started looking. I became sort of like really in tune with being at home. I started a web development company so I could be at home full time. So I was home. I had left Legend, and I just opened up an office in the house, and I was just home all the time. So now I was with my kids 24/7, and it was amazing. And then that's when I started talking to my wife about, we got to get out of here. Let's move to the country. Let's move, somewhere where we can have some land and grow our own food. And then we just literally within 6 months we're there. Like universe just guided us here, and I'm still at the house now that we discovered. That's just absolutely.
How many acres are you sitting on?
So we're only on a little over an acre here.
Okay.
But we've got a food forest. I've got 12 beds. I've got chickens, a greenhouse.
12 beds. You must have been a big house.
12 raised beds for growing food.
Oh, okay.
My bad.
Yeah.
12 raised beds right now. So we've got full food production going here.
Nice.
And bees and all that. And then we are in little river valley on the Smith River. So I discovered how important like clean water is to have. So we live on one of the cleanest rivers in America called the Smith River. It's the only undammed river. Well, now you have the Klamath's undammed, but it's really just like a totally pure river here that we live on, and very low population in where I'm at. So we have about 1 million trees to every human here in Del Norte County, on the very tip-top northern west county of California, on the border of Oregon and California. I think.
So you're fishing in that river a lot, or you're not a fisher?
Yeah, there's a good steelhead run. I became actually quite obsessed with steelhead fishing when I first moved here. I think the first year I got into it, I fished like 90 days. That's my personality, dude. I just get into something. So yeah, we have a salmon run, a winter salmon run, and a winter steelhead run that's just going on right now. Wild steelhead. And then we've got trout year round. Great little cutthroat trout in here that are fantastic to eat. So yeah, I fish the river here. We also play in the river. We raft the river. We swim the river. It's like a huge part of our life. And then I'm only 35 minutes away from the ocean. So we're kind of just tucked up into the mountains from the ocean. So I can surf. I took up surfing here much more seriously in the last few years. And really just, this is paradise. We're by the redwoods, low population. It's actually a very red place. Like, people think California is all just super woke, but most of California is actually very conservative. And so here it's like very old school, a very agricultural focused, and a lot of like old timber families and mining families that have been wrecked by globalism. So there's a lot of, like you were saying, in Pittsburgh, there's a lot of alcoholism. Well, there's a lot of meth use here, and drug addiction. And so, yeah, you have your problems here, but also it's just a lot of like common sense folk, very agrarian, very just like multi-generational American that just aren't buying what's being sold by government. So I like it here. I like the people here. Nice.
And so tell me about Alfa Vedic.
Yeah. So I started web design. Like, while I was working at Legend, I found that in 2008, if you remember, there was a big financial collapse, of course, we all know about, and it really hit Hollywood hard. And that was something that hit my pocketbook too, because they couldn't afford to bring me on as a producer anymore. I needed to have more talents. So I taught myself how to do WordPress development. And then I started saying, well, I can convert from being just like a field producer or associate producer or whatever to a VP of branding and media development, or whatever I called myself. And basically I started doing the websites for all of the different properties we had. So whether it be a TV show or a band or whatever, I would do the website for them. And that would be part of our services in the company. And so these different artists and stuff that would come on board with us, and the contract would be, you have a website and branding done. And that's what I started doing. So I started learning on the job how to do this stuff, like literally teaching myself HTML and CSS and coding and all this. And then that grew into having my own private company. And in doing that, I started helping out friends' websites. And one of those was this company, Mattole Valley Naturals, which was Dr. Bear and his family's supplement company that was being sold in like Erewhon and these stores. And so I redid their website, and I developed a relationship with them, and I built equity with them, and really became good friends with them. And so that ended up growing into Alfa Vedic, which was this more cutting edge manifestation of Dr. Lando's 40 years as a bioterrain physician. So these are really cutting edge products that are designed to support the terrain and not like fight germs. So it's not an allopathic approach, or even a green allopathic approach to what you see in most of naturopathy, but in herbalism, this is like a very cutting edge thing. And this was back in like 2014 that I really kicked it off, way before sort of like COVID and waking up to like no virus and all this stuff. So we were already talking about that way back in the day, like about the false germ theory and what terrain is, and like all of this stuff. Barre Lando was educating me on this way back in the day.
What is terrain theory in 2 sentences? Not to cut you off.
So terrain theory just explains that our body, like illness, quote unquote illness, does not come from an outside germ or virus or bacteria, but it comes from basically a distortion within the natural terrain of our body, whether that be through toxin, a poison, a toxic emotional, mental feeling, or like something distorting the biofield. But it's basically how the body actually works in terms of how we present symptoms, which is a distortion of our inner milieu of our terrain and our homeostasis of our inner terrain versus an outside attack from like a germ or bacteria or a virus. And that's known as germ theory, which is theory. It's theoretical. So I was taught this because Barre Lando, Dr. Lando, and so I actually was, what brought me to this was I was actually dealing with a chronic strep throat issue that I'd had since I was a child, and it would flare up almost every year. And I'd have to go to the doctor and get the penicillin, and I'd get really sick. And I've now found that I'm pretty sure we can directly relate this to the MMR vaccine. But that being, which I had as a kid, and my mom being a very traditional, conventional nurse had, and still back in the day, luckily we only had like 4 or 5 vaccines you got. But versus like the 70 now.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
So Bryden, who is my homie that I met actually via DJing in Santa Barbara, Bear's son, who ended up being that guy, who was the male model, door guy, artist, Future Heretics guy, good friend of mine. So he's like
the son of Dr. Barre Lando, which is your
son of
partner
Dr. Lando.
Okay.
I was sick. And he's like, you got to talk to my dad, dude. He can help you out, man. So I ended up meeting him and basically get to know him. And he explains to me about how the body actually functions, because he was a bioterrain physician at that time, one of the rare few in the world with his own clinic, that he had people from all over the world come to see him with like stage 4 cancer and all these issues that he would help then take through the process of self-healing through all of his modalities and multidisciplinary approach, but based on terrain, on terrain health. And so he explained to me all this stuff, and then he introduced me to all of these different ideas on how to heal myself. And so then I went on the path of self-healing, and then that opened up a spiritual path, and that was also sort of going along. I was going along that route while working in LA and Hollywood and learning this stuff and realizing, took me a while, but like I'm on the wrong path. Like smoking and partying and doing all this all night long is not going to be good for your soul and your health, obviously. So it wasn't until 2018 I went completely sober in terms of not drinking alcohol anymore. I fully quit alcohol, and I haven't had to sip since.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man. And in doing that, it wasn't like I had an issue with alcohol. Like I wasn't a bad drunk or, and I'm not just trying to justify that. Like I was known as the guy that would drive everybody home. I could really hold my booze, but I did have an issue with alcohol. Like I had an issue where that was my social lubricant, and I'd put down 6 to 7 Jack and Cokes in a night. I had a flask with me anytime I went out, everywhere I went. I didn't realize it, but that was my issue. And so long story short, I decided on the spiritual path that I wasn't going to engage in anymore. And, that's been my decision, and it's worked out well. But yeah, so that was sort of my path, is like, I figured out how to heal the chronic strep throat. I figured out how the body actually works, and I'm still discovering that. I'm still on an education of that till this day. That ended up through my web design. I became a partner with Alfa Vedic when we founded that. And then a few years later, through all of our talks on the phone with Barre Lando, we decided to I brought up the idea, dude, we have all these crazy conversations. What if we did a podcast where we just did those conversations, but we recorded it? And that became Alfacast. That we started in 2017 briefly. And then I sort of took a year off to do crypto. I started getting really into crypto and festivals and stuff. And then I came back in 2018-ish, and we started full board every Thursday doing it. We've been basically doing it ever since. And that's kind of where we are now with Alfacast, which is just an exploratory freeform podcast where we have guests on and we talk about all trippy stuff related to the nature of the realm, metaphysics, philosophy, health, wellness, politics, law, and it really all just relates to knowing yourself. and knowing where we live and who we are, and in doing that, going down that path, then you can know how to heal yourself. You can know how to properly engage with each other, with yourself, with your family. So that's been sort of where I'm at. And it's been great, man. I became a volunteer firefighter for a long time here when I moved here to get to know the town and people. So that was a trip. I ended up really going out of my bubble and out of my safety zone there, and testing myself. And I started really discovering this like important idea about going out of your comfort zone and testing yourself continually as a man, and the importance of that. And I've tried to really, imbue that in my boys too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that's really dangerous within modernities, because everything's so comfortable and taken care of for us. We've gotten to the point where man, especially like the masculine side, besides being totally feminized, has lost touch with that sort of that core masculine aesthetic around challenging oneself, going through those acts of maturation, right? Those trials of manhood. And so, yeah, I try to have my boys go through that every year, whether that be backpacking out in the wilderness in pretty gnarly conditions, or taking on something new, like having them do lifeguard, junior lifeguards this last few years, and learning how to, take on their fears of jumping in the ocean, and learning how to help people, and doing community service and like stuff that they, might not want to do, like helping the homeless and all that. So that's all been on this path of maturation and growth since leaving Hollywood.
That's greatness. I actually, when I had Jason Christoff on, we talked about that, how they've set it up so people avoid pain and suffering. And pain and suffering, going through pain and suffering and challenge, is how you expand and become the best person that you're going to be. And they've purposefully created a society. Well, some purposely, some. It's hard to. I have a hard time deciding what exactly is going on. We can get into that, but without suffering, without challenge, without pain, you're not going to expand.
Yeah, I mean, we are here to do labor. This idea that the point of life is the pursuit of happiness is not. That's a misnomer. It's not the pursuit of happiness. It's pursuit, and this is what I've come to really know. It's the pursuit of knowing who you truly are and what your true life's plan is, and what your mission is here, and your hero's journey. And like, as a film buff and as somebody who loves narration and in storytelling, I've really come to embrace this idea of the hero's journey, going back to Campbell and Joseph Campbell and I'm sorry, who's the guy, the hero's journey guy? I'm blanking out right now. But this idea that we go through these stages in our life to test us as we remember who we are and why we've come here, and then to fulfill that. And I think one of the saddest things right now in modern life, in modern times, is that most people have no clue about this and have no idea that's what they should be looking for, because they've been basically, since the day they've been born, told and brought into the machine of culture and society to basically be a cog, right, in the wheel of society. And their priorities have been sort of set by those top-down officialdom, whether that be your your counselor in high school who's helping you figure out what college you're going to go to your parents, to the priest class from your religion, to politicians, to teachers, to mentors who aren't really tapped in to know this stuff. And so a lot of people have no idea that they're here for a specific mission and have a specific life journey that they're supposed to be following, and they have superpowers, right? And so yeah, that's been sort of become my mission on my Substack, besides kind of going into the metaphysics of this place and how it all works, is really tapping into my own journey and exploring that and relating that, so people can see what I'm doing in my life, and hopefully as an inspiration to find that in their own life, and then seek that. And a big part of that is entrepreneurialism for me, like seeking out your own ways to bring revenues into your life through your own passions, your own vocation, versus just having a job. Not that there's a problem with having a job. Like, I had many jobs growing up, but I have been an entrepreneur for over 20 years now. And it's allowed me to have the freedom to be with my family and discover myself and have experiences in this life that are pretty crazy, but that have allowed me to grow. And yeah, that's another thing. You know, it's like, how are you going to grow spiritually, mentally, emotionally, if you're in a 9-to-5 job working towards that retirement, and just sort of stuck in that same rut where you get your 2 weeks of vacation time, you get your weekend, and you're there working for some other corporation. That's hard to, you know, have the space and the time and the energy to be able to do self-work, right?
To me, it's harder to do that than be homeless. I would rather be homeless because at least there's some interesting, you have some freedom, you know,
Yeah.
like, to me,
I've been
that's what
homeless.
you're, well, I mean, without a mission, you're really dead in the water. And I've been there. I've been in before I even understood all that. I've been there, and there's a hopelessness. It's like mission versus hopelessness. And
Yeah.
once you get on a mission, it's like you have to make a decision. Once you make a decision that this is what I'm going to do, and you get on a mission, there's no stopping you.
Yeah, and I didn't really discover that mission until pretty recently. Like, I had a sense of now what my calling was, which was to be a great father and husband and move to the country and then, you know, work my entrepreneurial spirit and drive, because I've always had this drive since that 21-year-old kid who decided to make Eats and Beats, right? And that's what my wife was attracted to when she met me. Is like, this is a self-driven man who is trying to make it himself, whether he fails or not. At least he's trying, and he's doing it for himself, and he's doing it in alignment with his principles and his moral, you know, caliber, whether that be off back then or not. Like, I was always driven by my own desire to be great for me and my family and not for somebody else. And now I've really sort of tuned that into now. And my maturation came about where it was like, I'm doing that, but out of service to humankind, out of service to my fellow brothers and sisters. But where 15 years ago, it was out of service to me. Now it's out of service to the greater good of, you know, by educating and by inspiring and by creating new communities and, you know, new events like Music and Sky and stuff I'm doing with like Cordal and stuff. So that's been like a huge switch over, but it wasn't until Music and Sky, really, which I could briefly touch on, that I had the illuminated moment of that hit me finally, that I knew what I was here for. And that was in 2020, ironically, 2020 vision, baby.
We'll go on about Music and Sky. Let's hear about it.
Okay. So, you know, since college, I've been throwing events and doing raves and been a DJ. I never stopped. So even in the 2010s, I was still playing. When I even moved up here, I was playing like local fun shindigs and hootenannies for the town here. I would play for the school. I would play for the fire department fundraising, the Christmas party. Like, I've always been a DJ, always will be a DJ. And then I discovered sort of the consciousness festival scene in the mid 2010s. Started going to like Lucidity and these, you know, you might have heard of like Lightning in a Bottle and these other events that were more about consciousness, more about like, so, you know, psychedelics played a big role, but it wasn't like a drinking booze cocaine fest like Coachella, which was all about the music. It was about, you know, tapping into your true consciousness and community and all that. So I started DJing those types of events and doing those types of events. And then in 2020, you know, when the whole COVIDian apocalypse came down upon us.
I call it World War COVID, but go ahead.
Yeah. The COVIDiots took
World
over.
World War COVID.
Yeah. And we had Gruesome Newsome telling us that we weren't allowed to do events, and all the festivals got canceled and nobody was hanging out in California, because that's where I was. I was hit up by some friends and some colleagues that were in the space of doing events and in that culture. And we're like, hey, we want to put together a festival and do it in the underground and do like we used to, and but also have it like really tuned into really alternative, cutting edge concepts around health and wellness and law and all these things you talk about on your podcast. I'm like, I'm in, let's do it. So I partnered up with my buddy Owen and my buddy Matt, and we found this location in Joshua Tree called Garce Boulder Gardens, which this old hippie had this square mile of Boulder Gardens, and he could care less about COVID. And he just was like, you guys want to do stuff? Cool. You can do it at my place. It's all private. Nobody's going to mess with you. So we actually, it was funny enough, we were trying to go through some traditional channels to book DJs and stuff. And like those agencies were like, okay, you can book these guys, but you're going to have to be 6 feet apart in all the lines. And we're going to have to take temperature check at check-in. And we're like, F that. We didn't work with anybody from any like normie space. We ended up just self-producing it all, like, which was my roots, and booked our friends DJ. And then I went through my friends through the podcast and brought in like really cutting edge speakers. And we had really awesome talks during the day. We had yoga and brought all that stuff in, and Qigong, and really like cool talks on like alternative health and law and sovereignty and like countering germ theory and dispelling like all these fears around the virus and stuff. And then we would have awesome ecstatic dance and music going all night. And long story short, like, my buddy Josh was really inspired by this, and he is a filmmaker and really active in truther kind of world. So he wanted to bring a crew on to document it and make to document it all and shoot all the talks and stuff. And so I'm sitting down in like an interview on the second to last day, and it's been like insane. It's been like 4 days of running this event. We had about 220 people show up to this to camp for 4 days. And it was a lot of work, and I had barely slept, and I was pretty emotional that we pulled it off. Like I had no idea what was going on, how this was going to come out, because if you remember at this time, we had riots going on in California. We had the Black Lives Matter stuff. We had like a lot of the summer of love. Yeah, the summer of love, baby. So I had literally brought a shotgun with me and put it under my bed. I pulled my trailer out from up here all the way down to Joshua Tree. Like I had a fully loaded shotgun on me. I didn't know if I was going to, because what I'll do is I'll just I don't want to stop. So like I'll pull off at a rest stop and sleep for a couple hours off the 5, or literally pull off by like a freeway on ramp and sleep. And usually by a lot of, semi trucks, but I don't know, was I going to get robbed? It was like, things were crazy. So, and then we didn't know where the sheriff's going to come in and raid us for doing an underground illegal gathering in California. So it was pretty punk rock, but it went off without a hitch. Everybody was just so in alignment. It was just so much like resonance of powerful energy there, of all these beautiful, awake people that wanted to come together and celebrate, and it was just so powerful. So I'm sitting there in this chair getting interviewed by this team, and I like break down a little bit and get emotional. And I'm like, I realized what my whole life, all my crazy background, from being this underground DJ and throwing raves, and then doing these like TV productions and shooting all this stuff and interviewing people, and then like being a podcaster and getting into all these alternative things and conspiracies and being a salesman, and like that is also, I can do this because that all of those is a very unique human being that can pull this off, be able to sell the tickets, to put together the event, know how to MC on stage, like DJ the after party, like everything I was doing, pulling the production together, the crew, to film it and everything, like
the aesthetic of the location, all that stuff.
Yeah. I'm like, and it hit me. I'm like, that is my life's path. My crazy, weird background of going through all that stuff and like the underground and raves, like it all came to this, to Music in Sky. So we've now done 6 of them. It's turned into a whole little movement. We've got a really vibrant international community. We've got an online private space there, kind of like the Alfa Vedic one you've joined. And we're now creating our own community, our own Music in Sky Village. We're doing it all in the private, and then built within a trust and a PMA and a ministry. And we're buying land, and we're creating our own permanent village for people to live at and to live the Music in Sky life 24/7.
What's the ministry?
Oh, so a ministry is just a way to sort of get around a lot of the tax stuff. And
I gotcha. Yeah. Like the ayahuasca shamans, it's a church.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be the Church of Music in Sky, baby. And
nice. So I'll have links in the show notes, but like, when's the next festival? Can people sign up or?
So we're not doing one this year for the first time because we're fully focused on building out the village, which is going to be a massive enterprise. So we decided we may do a smaller incubator event once we get our land for people that want to just be hyper involved with building out the village. But we are going to be involved with Confluence, which is in early May in Texas. We're going to be hosting a Music and Sky Lounge there, and sort of our sister event. It's very similar. They were inspired by us to do it.
Is that Alex Zeck's deal?
Yeah,
Okay,
my buddy
yeah.
Alex Zeck and Eileen McCusick and Molly Englehart on her farm outside in Bandera, Texas, outside of where is it? San Antonio.
Okay.
In the hill country there. It's just their third one. I've been to all of them. I've been very involved. I'll be DJing at this one. We'll be doing the Music and Sky Lounge there. And I love seeing these other events now that are popping up. That were inspired by Music and Sky. We've had the Living Free movement in Australia. They did their festival I went out to last year.
That's cool.
And then like Anarchapulco has been really inspired. And I just got off a call with Kat about coming in and helping them bring more music and art and lifestyle into that event. So it's more of a festival. And
I heard a rumor they're moving to Puerto Vallarta. Is that true?
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I love Acapulco, but like I said, it's such a pain to get there.
And it's not set up as well. Like we're gonna maybe help them a little bit with some ideas for location.
That's great.
And they're also going out in Serbia. I may go out in Serbia in September. It's just been really cool to see the outgrowth of all of our efforts into inspiring others to do similar events, because that's really needed, that we come in person, we like hang out together in person.
Agreed.
Obviously, Zoom's like virtual stuff like this is really great, and the internet's allowed people to really come together in ways that I think the beast system had never considered. But it's coming together in person is really where it's at, and that's what was a big impetus for us doing Music and Sky. It's like we saw what they were trying to do during COVID: lock everybody up, separate everybody 6 feet apart, everybody sequestered in their own home, virtual Zoom classes for students, like. That was all playing into the transhuman agenda.
Anti-human.
Yeah, anti-human, fake pseudo simulacrum, virtual worldscape that they're doing because they've run out of they've run out of the physical property to take over. So now they want to create virtual property to enslave us in. So anyways, that's been a really important part of my life. And I've been able to integrate Alfa Vedic into that. And a lot of the Alfa Vedic community goes to Music and Sky, and the Music and Sky supports Alfa Vedic. And then, so it's been incredible. And now I get to go and I get to now a DJ and MC and speak at these events. I'm going to North Carolina on Monday for 6 days to MC and a DJ and speak at an event for the naturopath. God, my brain is just suffering today. She's very well-known Australian naturopath. It'll come to me in a second. Barbara O'Neill. I don't know if you know her. She's very popular on like Instagram and stuff. So anyways, they booked me to go out there and do that. And so it's been cool, man. Like I do these events almost once a month right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, okay, before we get you out of here, and I wanted to ask you 2 quick questions, because I heard you talk on Alfacast, which is a great podcast. Everybody should listen to. It's a really cool podcast.
Thank you.
Talk about quickly your experience with astral projection, out of body experiences.
Yeah, actually, as a kid, my father, who had gotten his master's in psychology, had learned about this through a professor friend of his who was actually working with students to teach them how to do this. And they would astral project and meet each other in LA and fly around at night. And then he was even like doing stuff where he was going to see patients in the hospital that had traumatic injuries, and going in and projecting his astral body into their body and like mending tendons and stuff.
Your dad was doing that?
No, the professor that my dad knew. And so the guy that he knew became close with. So I'm like a 14-year-old having really weird dreaming stuff at this time and I was talking to my dad about it, and he's like, well, you should really read this book. So he got me, he gave me a book on astral projection and how to do it. And then
What's the book?
basically it's I'll have to
you
look
remember?
it up.
Okay, yeah, no worries about it. Don't worry.
And
This is, by the way, this is a real thing. I listened to a podcast. It was a former CIA guy who was involved in they made the film The Men Who Stare at Goats, but it was kind of a sort of a normie sort of
Trumley, or what's his
psyop.
name? Yeah.
There's a couple guys and he, I mean, it was a real thing. So, but go ahead.
Yeah. I'm thinking of Robert Monroe. And Robert Monroe, Bob Monroe Institute is still there, and the CIA actually worked with him. And he, like in that series of books, he took it upon himself to be very scientific with how he essentially observed this phenomenon, and then how it was repeatable, and he would teach people how to do it. And basically, it's about like staying awake while your body falls asleep. And then you get these massive vibrations, which can be quite freaky. And he's like, it can be actually these like loud sounds even. And then you will yourself out of your body. And then you actually there was a time where I was like floating out of my window when I was 16. And then
so hold on. So you get the book, you read the book, and now what happens then?
So I read the book, and then I start trying it, and I start basically getting the vibrations right away. And then I'm able to have some experiences that usually happen when I'd kind of wake up groggy early morning and then go back to sleep. I'd immediately get the vibrations because in my conscious, I'm thinking about going out of my body. And it's like on the top of my head because I'm reading about it and I'm aware of it. And that's really how you have to kick this in. It's like dream journaling and stuff. So your conscious, your subconscious, your unconscious is actually being sent these signals to engage in this activity. And then boom, all of a sudden I'm floating out my window. And I freak out and I snap back into my body. Mm-hmm. And then a couple nights later, I'm like having this experience where now I'm out of my body and I'm being attracted to my parents' bathroom. So I'm like going through the house out of my body. It's not a dream. And then there's like this dark evil force that's trying to come in, and I end up battling this like dark demonic force within my parents' bathroom that's been attracted to me, I guess. And so it's like this battle of the wills where I feel like I'm almost going to give up and lose everything in my life, and it's all going to end. And it was like he was dominant. This energy was dominating me. And then I finally found it deep within me to say no. And I found like this love of my family, and I needed to protect them. And I shot this creature out, this being out of the bathroom, and it snapped back in my body. Had a massive headache, felt really like tired and out of it. And that was pretty scary and pretty weird.
You're 16 years old at the time?
Yeah, I was 16. And then, and keep in mind, I'm coming from a very like Catholic background, I was an altar server. I think I just stopped being an altar server, but at that time I was actually doing youth groups. And I was actually, a little bit later when I was 17, I was actually leading, freshmen up into the mountains. And I was like a youth group leader. That's when I kind of was almost considering going to the priesthood because I was having these experiences and I didn't know how to weigh them. I was like, what is going on here? There's obviously dark forces, demonic forces in this world. The Catholic Church has acknowledged that through, the act of, certain priests can do exorcisms and stuff like that. And so anyways, and then I had some weird, really lucid dreams where I'd seen my watcher in this temple that I was very lucid in, knew I was dreaming, and I could look down these columns and I saw this hooded, cloaked figure looking at me, and I knew that was my watcher, which you supposedly have. And so I was on the path towards this sort of very like mystical warrior path. And then I got to be honest, I got scared by it all. And so then I stopped doing it. I stopped focusing on it. And then in college, a few times I had it where I popped out of my body, not even meaning to, and I was stuck on my ceiling and stuff. My sister got really into it. And because my dad was teaching her about it, because she had an issue with sleepwalking. She was always sleepwalking. And to the point where it was kind of getting scary. And so we wanted her to take control of her dreams. But in doing that, she got really good at going out of body, and she had experiences going to other worlds. And in college, she would go out and be able to see her neighbors in the dorms, see what they're doing, and then come back into her body and then go and then tell them to like prove to them that she was doing this. And then she had a weird instance where she had projected out into another sort of reality on another planet, if you will, or another place, and this like girl was dying, and this like energy was coming out of her, and she was like, help me. And my sister got freaked out and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I'm getting back into it again. Like, I think I'm ready to start kind of going into the astral again. You got to be really careful because you're dealing in an emotionally driven, desire driven realm, where you have a lot of spooks and thought forms that have been released by damaged souls, and you have entities that are looking to attach onto you. So you got to really have your game dialed if you want to start playing around in those realms. And so I don't recommend it.
What's the advantage of doing it? Why would you do it? I mean, besides the fact that it's interesting.
So I want to do it to explore my consciousness a little more, to be able to tap into other. So what it seems to occur is when you start to dream journal and get more lucid with your dreams, you can start working on manifestation better. You can start working on literally affecting things in the physical world. That's literally magic. But then also you can work on your psychic powers. So one thing that was happening to me when I was really developing this is I started getting precognition. I know this sounds crazy, but I had, in fact, at one time, I had this before going out for a night back in the day. I knew exactly how the whole night was going to play out. I saw the night. I saw the girl I was going to hook up with, who I'd never really known. I saw how it was going to end up. I saw exactly the whole night, and the whole night went that way. And so I started having little moments of precognition where I knew what was going to happen ahead of time. Some would call that even like little moments of deja vu, where you kind of remember that you had seen this or knew about this, but I actually had precognition where I knew stuff was going to happen before it was going to happen. So like developing those skills, I do believe we have those inherent skills, and that's why time is fluid. It's not so much a linear cause and effect. This place is magical, and we are the greatest technology, and we can actually engage in this stuff when we learn how to properly control and manage it. And there must be an alignment with your moral inner law and in your heart base center of your rightness and reason, of your true being on the path. And if you go like the left-hand path and you're doing this for power and you're doing this for the wrong reasons, it will only cause despair and a lot of damage karmically, even for your future lives, I believe. But if you're on the right path and you're doing this out of service to others, and like if I can really get in tune and like manifest things in a much more fast, powerful way, like for music and sky and stuff, like why not, develop these skills?
Yeah, that brings me to my final question. And the world that we're living in now is controlled by those people, I think, on the left-hand path. And they've got to keep all this information occulted so they can continue to control us and extort us. And in your opinion, where is this going to go? Where are we? Sometimes, some days I think we're headed to the electronic prison and it's lights out. Maybe not me personally, and then other days I think we're gonna, because the whole thing is an evolution is the only chance we have. Revolution's never going to work. I had some guys screaming on me on tweets on Twitter of what an idiot I was, and the French Revolution was so great, and blah, blah, blah. I said, if the revolutions worked, then why aren't we free right now? They don't work. They just get co-opted. You end up with you meet the new boss, same as the old boss. We need evolution. We need to transcend this situation, in my opinion. What do you think about that? And then where do you think this is going?
Well, these are great questions to have. And I think that's why it's important to study philosophy and metaphysics and get to know yourself better, because in the end, it's the individuated path that matters about the most, and understanding like capital C consciousness and how this place works. And it's not just material. And then that is the spiritual path. And I think this place will always have conflict. This place will always have power systems struggling and, lost souls and
this realm,
like this place, Earth, whatever you want to call this. And because I see it as a creator's school, it's a place that requires that back and forth by, polarity, so that we have challenges and we have the necessary, stimulus for growth. That being said, that we also live in a consensus-based reality where consciousness is all connected. you and I are inherently deeply connected. And there are massive trends of consciousness awakeness, or whatever you want to call it, the Great Awakening, that can lead to, I don't want to say I believe in like a golden age. I believe that is probably a false notion, but it can lead to great, as you say, like evolutionary steps towards awesome stuff, right? And like great experiences. And so for me, it's about engaging in the personalized experience of your own maturation and knowing who you truly are and creating that best life for you, the inside out approach, and then sharing that with as many people as you can, sharing the fruits of your labor with as many people as you can, and being as a service to others to help like basically spread that awareness to others so that they can too and engage in that. And that's truly what anarchy is. That's how it works, so that we can build beautiful communities and build beautiful things and have those experiences reach more people. And that is through decentralization. That's through cooperation. That's through bottom-up development. Not so much these like big, as you said, like revolutions or fighting the system or, revolting. That never works. And the French Revolution led to just more of the same. It just led to it led to a lot of atheism. It led to a lot of like where we are now.
I was going to say it could be argued it made things a lot worse.
A lot worse in many ways, right? And it was co-opted, and then of course you had Napoleon come in, and you had empire, and you had a lot of like the French philosophers that were highly materialistic, and now that course went into postmodern theory, which came out of France, which really came out of that supposed age of reason that was the driving factor behind the French Revolution. And that is a completely nihilistic, cynical approach and view that is literally what feeds wokeism. It feeds a lot of like the sort of left's agenda and their philosophy that is still really like taken over academia and the university system, is all coming from the French Revolution.
The transgender industrial complex and all that stuff.
All of that stuff.
The Enlightenment.
Yeah, the Enlightenment was a total inversion, right? So, but all that being said, I do see that we are having parallel. I think the focus here is on parallel systems. There is a sort of bipolarity happening here, where you have those who are choosing to stay with the conventional old way that are going to die, that are going to really feel a lot of pain. And then you do have this sort of breaking off of these smaller, decentralized, more locally oriented folks that are trying new things and doing new things that some might say is like sort of an Aquarian concept, right? It's this idea of decentralized, bottom up, individualized, versus the more Piscean, older idea of looking to officialdom, being involved in like religion or like groupthink. And so I do see this sort of bipolar splitting of those as the old dies and the new kind of grows out of that. And I don't know, we could go a lot of different ways. We can go down a lot of darkness there with decentralization, like I talked about on my recent Substack, which is like isolating people into a virtual hellscape and tricking people into believing they need to merge with robots and machines and all that. And just like more and more political nonsense. Or we also have like the notions of bottom up self-governance, decentralization, everything you're seeing with new media and sort of like more self-actualized spirituality, people coming to know that they can, through the internet and stuff, figure out stuff on their own. They don't need to go to school. They don't need to trust in big institutions. So yeah, it's really, I think, up to every individual's own path on how you want to propagate your own life. And it's always been that way, and it always will be that way. But also we can't deny the sort of the cultural milieu that we are in. And so I try to surround myself with people that are freedom focused, that are self-organizers. And that's why we started Music in Sky. That's why I like going to Anarchapulco. Those are my homies.
Well, it's funny you bring up the French Revolution, the sort of hyper individualism that infected sort of anarchy or libertarianism or whatever. And it is a problem. It is what you said, the dark side, because we are all connected. We need community, you need order, and there's going to be hierarchies that develop, and you need natural hierarchies, and they're voluntary hierarchies. Like the festival, without you, it doesn't happen. You need, and you had people that were working under you, I'm sure. You need that hierarchy to have order for things to get done. And we're all interconnected, and that has to be understood and respected.
Yeah, no great film is made by just a chaotic crew just running around without the hierarchy. That's that's why I love the medium of film, because that really represents natural order in a way it makes sense, All
right, yeah, I agree 100%. Of course, well, I won't even go into that, but man,
the idea of free will and individuated agency is the powerful thing here, right? It's like having the ability to go off and you're inspired, go do your own event and find your people to work with and do it yourself, your way.
Mm-hmm.
That's anarchy. It's based within the confines and the construct of law. These concepts of do no harm and natural law.
Natural law.
Yeah.
Natural law is immutable. You have life decisions you can make, but you cannot break natural law. And when your life decisions go against natural law, you suffer.
Exactly.
Man, it was great talking to you, man. I really appreciate you taking the time and giving us your time. I know you're a busy guy. This was cool. I could talk forever with you about films.
Well, I want to start, and I apologize. My brain was I was up pretty late last night working on some websites, but I want to start a film. I want to start like a film podcast. I think I'm going to do it through my Substack, and it's going to be film, pop culture, media, lifestyle, but from our perspective,
how do we do that? I always want to do that. And I always want to talk film, but it's almost like starting like and I'm not saying it's as hard or just totally different professions, but it's almost like starting like a rocket science podcast. I mean, it's such a small group of people. Yeah, exactly. So how do we do that? I thought about this when I was flying home from Acapulco. I'm like, we had these conversations about film. We could go off and have a 3-hour podcast and it would go by like that. But does anybody else care? You know what I mean?
I think we just do it, and you approach it in a way where we're coming from our perspectives, relating it to power structures, occult, esoteric, in ways that, there are people that do this, but they do it from a very conspiracy mindset, where we're doing this from a more of a appreciation of the art.
And we also have an inside understanding of how the art got created too. Yeah.
I mean, film school was kind of a joke to me, but I did learn a lot, in terms of the history of film theory. And that always stood with me, and it helped me appreciate it more and more. And it's funny now, I appreciate it way more than I did when I was in film school, talking about it, nerding out on the on how all the different elements are used to tell story, and themes and theories around how film actually works and relating to consciousness. And we can talk all about that. That is the hero's journey. That's why people love going into a dark theater and falling into the dream state of watching a single character go through some sort of hero's arc, because that is what we inherently, our subconscious knows is what we're supposed to be doing. So
that's true. Could we maybe make the show, we build it around a movie or build it around a TV show? I
think that's a great way. Or a director, we're going to talk about
director. We could go director.
Robert Altman today, and then we just go into
multiple episodes. You go over Altman shortcuts. You go over Altman Nashville. You go over whatever, That could be a way to do it. Build around that.
Player is a long
it's a masterpiece. That's a great film. See what I'm saying? We can start right now. I can say
Miller, total alternative Western there.
Yeah. That's a cool film. Yeah. He's, man, I love Shortcuts. I love all LA. I won't go off right now, but I love LA films just in general.
Yeah.
Okay. Where can people find you? I'll have obviously the links to everything for the delight of the audience, but where can everybody find you?
Easiest way would be mikewinner.com.
Okay.
I actually just finally made my own website for the first time this year, and that has all my stuff. So mikewinner.com. and just go there. You'll find me through, Alfa Vedic, Music and Sky, Chordal is another thing I've been involved with, the new internet development project. So yeah, we should talk more, and definitely be fun to get you on my Substack and nerd out on film, or maybe we do like one of those swap pot, or we just do it where we put it out to multiple channels, all of our respective channels, and
let's just put it out. We should do like a mini series and see if anybody watches it. And if they don't, we'll stop.
Yeah, that would be rad.
Or if we just have a blast doing it, we don't care if anybody watches it.
I know, right? Like, I just love talking about this stuff no matter what. So,
man, I gotta get to the point. I've got to get a project where it's worth you getting involved. Like, so I want to get you involved in the next film. I don't know what your job would be. Maybe you're one of the producers or something.
That'd be awesome. I'd be honored.
Okay, cool.
Because that's one thing we're working on with Alfa Vedic. So Bryden and his wife Steph, they're filmmakers now. Like, he always had a passion with film too, and they made their own indie film. They self-produced and shot, and I think they were featured on the Indie Hustle podcast. Actually.
Okay. What was the film? Was it a fiction film?
Yeah, it was like a little romance that took place in Hawaii, and they literally went on their honeymoon and shot the film on their honeymoon, self-financed. I think
a feature film,
a full feature.
Oh, that's cool. They did it on their honeymoon.
Yeah. And
who is that again? Who was it again?
All shotguns shot. So it was all the stolen locations. And so it was Barre Lando's son, the partner in Alfa Vedic, Bryden Lando, and then his wife, Stephanie Lando, who was an actress when he met her. And she's been in some feature films and stuff. And she's actually a writer and a producer as well. And so I only bring that up because we want to do our own films, like through Alfa Vedic Productions. And documentaries start. We did have a documentary film shot on us called The Magic Land. That's David Icke's team did, and we actually ended up producing it because it was during COVID and they couldn't come over. They financed it, and it's on Iconic on their network, which was pretty cool. But we want to do more stuff around really trippy concepts around terrain and around the natural design and philosophy and stuff, but then ground it into agriculture and what we do on the land and how we run our lives. And then also like biopics too, about really cool people like Walter Russell, who's inspired us. And we've talked with Matt Presti from the Walter Russell. He was the president of the Walter Russell Foundation. He would love to help write the screenplay and like maybe a Rudolph Steiner biopic. I don't know. Like,
where does Barre Lando live? I mean, obviously, does he live around your area? Yeah,
they live at the farm at the Smith River on the South Fork, fully off grid, about 45 minutes from me.
Because it sounds like your situation really lends itself good to a reality TV show, a series. It really does, especially what you guys are doing.
Yeah. I mean, we're off grid, LA expat, homesteading, doing all the stuff. So
people love that. Yeah. I want to make fiction. And you talked earlier before I let you go about, being a young man being 50s to 60s, but there's a guy named Paul Schrader who wrote, I'm sure you're familiar, wrote Taxi Driver. I don't know what he's doing right now, but he hit a lick in a good way in his late 70s and 80s and started making these indie films.
Yep.
And they're just like, love them or hate them. They're just old school, like making a film so I can make a film. And he's had a couple that were actually a little bigger than a couple of indies that he did. He did one with Willem Dafoe. I love. It's like this criminal gang. Willem Dafoe plays a psychopath. It's just like an old school 90s.
That was 98. I think that came out.
Is that 98? Was that long ago?
I think so, man. That was one of his early runs. Then he had a run in the early 2000s, and a lot of them take place in New York, right?
We did the one with recently a couple of years ago about the dude who was a gambler and then had PTSD from Iraq
with
the guy from Ex Machina.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of his bigger ones. He was like in Vegas.
Paul Schrader is he's definitely an auteur at heart.
Well, my point is that his thing was he makes $1 to $5 million films, and he's like, this is the sweet spot. Your producers make all their money back, and you get to keep Final Cut.
Yeah.
So it just seems crazy to me that we're on the same page like this, and we want to do the same things. We should be producing stuff together.
Yeah, I agree.
In my humble opinion,
I agree. Because
it's going to be good. We're going to make good stuff. We're not going to make lousy stuff.
Yeah, I remember when he did the canyons. He did that for like nothing.
Yeah, that was terrible.
It was terrible. He did that for like almost nothing. But that was not. Yeah, he had a lot of bad movies, but then he occasionally will pull one out. But yeah, no, I would love to talk more and like connect you. I think you would really love to connect with Bryden and Steph. They're actually in Ventura now. They had to get out of Venice, out of LA. It was just too much. They have a kid and doing stuff. But we should all have a little chat because we all want to do that. We all want to make independent cinema. It's a lot to do, but if we had a really awesome passion project, that made a lot of sense and that was going to have a great effect, this is what you do. So I'd love to come in and help as a producer. And, they're actually great screenwriters themselves. So maybe they could help even on a script and all that. And then Steph's done like line producing and I've done ADing, second ADing, all that stuff. So I would love to be on set too, because it's just super fun and bring my kids, maybe Mateo could be a PA.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right, brother. Thanks again.
Thanks, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Okay, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Tregsman with 2 G's and an S. We'll also have the links to our subscription and social media in the show notes, wherever you watched or listened to the episode. If you're currently supporting the show and Drew TV, thank you, and we'll see you next week.